So here we are at Varanasi. My name is Jeremy Holtman. I'm a Pravasi Bhartiya OCI card holder from USA. And I have been running tours and partnering with various companies. We're very thankful for Sita and crew to give us a look at Destination Varanasi. We'll just be sharing a little bit about understanding sacred space and tourism in Banaras. Just starting out with a beautiful modern rendition of an old map here. You can see the city of Varanasi in the Ghats, the embankments, and some Hindi captions on various places. This is a part of a bigger map that we'll get into a little bit later. For those of you who like to know where we're going, here's a small table of contents. We're going to go from a short introduction of Varanasi to understanding some of how I developed a particular version of doing tours here, experiential encounters and static sites. And then we're going to go through some of Varanasi walking tours experiences and eventually ending up, yeah? One particular quote that perhaps now has become overused and we see it around here and there about Varanasi, but other people in some ways it's not overused. Other people never even realized that Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain came to Varanasi in 1890s. It was just after he had went bankrupt and needed to make some money to pay his debts. So he went on a round-the-world tour, and he stopped to a lot of places, Egypt, South Sea Islands. And it appears that he only was here for a few days, but he wrote some 15, 16 pages on Varanasi. He says, Banaras is older than history, older than tradition, older even than legend, and looks twice as old as all of them put together, which there's a little of Mark Twain's humor in there, him being a humorist, saying that it looks a little bit ramshackle. And, but he has a lot of love for the city, and there's fantastic quotes circling the equator, or traveling the equator, published in 1897, if you want to check that out. For those of you who don't know a lot about Varanasi, you can see on the map here that Varanasi lies on the edge of Uttar Pradesh state, the northern state. The capital is Lucknow in the center, and New Delhi is on the edge of Uttar Pradesh in the northwest. Varanasi is down in the south corner there. It's an area just after Allahabad, about 3 hours, or Prayagraj, as it's called now. And this is just after the Ganga River and the Yamuna River come together in Allahabad. And it reaches Varanasi. Varanasi considered the Hindu capital, or historically, cosmologically, the capital and founding place of the Hindu world in terms of thought, one of the places where Shiva keeps his home, if you want to go back into folklore, mythology, or narrative, however you want to describe that connection to a space. It contains a lot of hotels. There's a very easy place to get to by air from Delhi, from Calcutta, from any of the major cities in India. Fantastic new airport. It's always been a center for education, literature, the arts, music, weaving, fashion, business. In fact, it sat on a north trade route that moved eventually from Calcutta all the way to Kabul, and with links from Kashmir and traders coming down that would bring silk up to the old Chinese silk route. Also a north-south area where goods would come up from southern India. Basically one of the first cosmopolitan cities where you had multiple maharajas, multiple kings taking a residence there and not fighting. Along with those kings came large bodies of various communities of people, each doing their trades, all focused on business, and consequently, Varanasi becomes a textile center, and a particular weave is developed there. There's about 2.5 million people in Varanasi from the airport, 22 kilometers away till just across the river. 500,000 of those in the 4-kilometer stretch next to the river, what we call the Old City. And there are many English speakers and, of course, Hindi and Urdu speakers in Varanasi. Now, that's a basic overview. In my experience, I came as a tourist to India and ended up working in New Delhi in the early 90s, or late 90s, 1997 to be exact. And I was just like anyone else. I would go to sites, UNESCO sites, famous places, and take pictures of them. And I noticed even then that when I met a local person and had an encounter with them, that the site itself became more interesting to me. So that maybe was the genesis of my development of the walking tours in Varanasi. When I think about sightseeing as a foreigner or a visitor, and the idea of darshan, which would be more of a pilgrimage activity, I find that there's like this liminality, or this changing shape of where these borders meet of sightseeing and darshan. And I just want to say something for a second here. When somebody goes on a tour, they're going in a circle. Yeah, they're starting someplace, they go to another place, and they return back to their starting point. And this was a tour. And even the great tours of Europe, where people would walk through various places and return home, hoping to have carried some picture or write something or a change inside themselves. On the other hand, a pilgrim who's coming for darshan doesn't see themselves exactly as a tourist, but some change is happening inside them when they take darshan at a particular sacred site. Here in the picture on the left, you can see a picture of the Lat Bhairav, which is a very interesting site. And this Lat Bhairav is an image of Shiva in his Bhairav aspect that's set inside a Muslim Kabristan, like a graveyard. And the pillar itself, which you see in orange just behind, it's a pillar that's encased in an iron tube that is thought to be one of the Ashokan pillars. So you have a multi-religious site that's very Hindu now, and a very interesting place, a conjunction of different things to see as a tourist. And as you can see, we have some marks on our forehead. So this would be tilak for men. And this means that we engaged with the priest for darshan. Now, darshan means to take sight. So it's an interesting link to sightseeing. So when we take sight somewhere, we look to the eyes of the image and some supernatural power passes to us. And this act, whether we believe it or not, it's not the priest's role to judge our beliefs. So the priest acts as if we are participants. And I find that the Hindu people and Indian people are very receptive to us as outsiders coming into their sacred space and participating, which isn't always the case in every culture. And so it's just a fantastic place to end up on a tour. And Varanasi, one of the most magical of these places. Let's continue on. When we navigate sacred space, it takes humility on our part. And we can see here on the left, there's a picture of Ganga. Ganga rides a porpoise-like creature, and she is the river. And she's personified as a fair female goddess. And so we have to take into account, as a tourist, the people's beliefs, their traditions, their customs, basically culture, riti rivaj and parampara. And when we gain acceptance in those areas of sacred space, then the tourism just magnifies, because we're having actual experiential encounters with local people from that place that are worshiping these entities. And for a short time, we end up participating in those places, no matter what our belief system, and with the blessing of those people that we're encountering. So it's just a very unique experience. You can see a map here on the right. This is the map of the Panchkroshi Yatra, reimagined in modern days. This is easily found on the internet. And the original maps kept very, very hidingly by those who have the few maps. There's one map in the Ganges View Hotel, which I know that your company utilizes from time to time, run by the fabulous Shashank Singh. And there's another map with Professor P.B. Rana Singh. And there's a unique map that's been put onto the internet by the University of Heidelberg. And if you go to Heidelberg, they've highlighted all of the 108 places of darshan that are in the circle around the map, the very small little temples on the outside of the circle, and you can click on them and then see the picture of the actual site. So a very interactive display made by Professor Jord of the University of Heidelberg. And this perhaps is a good example of navigating sacred space and seeing how a person would travel from place to place, temple to temple on a pilgrimage, which would be very different than us hosting a tourist. On the next set of slides, these are a couple slides, various things I found as I research about Varanasi. And you can see they're using the old name of Banaras. So Banaras was the name used for years and years, especially in colonial times, where they changed the shape of the word Banaras to Benares. And you can see here on the Mosque of Aurangzeb at Panchganga Ghat that both of the minarets are there. The minarets are now taken down since the 1950s, after one had fallen years before. And this is one of the highest points of the city, a great vantage point for photographs. There are 5 places or sacred spots that are more sacred than sacred space, if I can use that category. Panchganga is one of them. They usually are considered 2 spots on each side of the main embankment of Dasashramat Ghat. The first Ghat, Adikeshav, in the north, then Panchganga or Manikarnika, depending on the list you're reading. But Panchganga is always listed. Sometimes Manikarnika listed additionally. Then Dasashramed, then Kedar Ghat, moving towards the south of the city, and then the last is Asi Ghat. And these are the 5 sacred spaces. But you can see even in this 1930s, I would imagine, tour poster that people have been encouraged in tourism for a long time to come and visit Varanasi. This is a Clark's Hotel luggage tag. This is showing Dasashramat Ghat. Actually, this is a very small ghat in between both sides of Dasashramat. This is Prayag Ghat. Prayag meaning confluence or crossing point. And this is the exact geographic center of the city of Varanasi. Clark's Hotel being a colonial hotel that was taken over by Indian ownership in 1940s, 47. Now we continue on. Now we see a map here on the left that is the classic map of India, or of Varanasi, made by James Prinsep. And this is from Rana P.V. Singh's online publication, though you can write also to one of the museums in England. They also have this, and you can find on the Banaras map, Bunarus. And it's a beautiful map. James Prinsep, aside from being a cartographer and maker of maps, took the first census of the city. He also deciphered the Ashokan pillar and gives us the name Ashoka and links it to the great Buddhist king. Eventually the Ashokan wheel coming onto the Indian flag. Just a fantastic colonial era minter of coins in the Banaras Mint, who went far beyond his vocation and gave us some beautiful pictures and etchings of the Ghats. But this is the first 2-scale map of the city. And as foreigners, and myself being a foreigner, we often use these types of maps to navigate the places we want to go. We wouldn't use a religious map that shows the sacred spaces, but we would use this far more linear style of map because we want to navigate how to get in and get out. And sometimes it's said it's more about the journey than the destination. But with those of us who do tours, it's where you got to get to that destination. And sometimes we fail to experience the journey. So beautiful map there. You can see the whole riverside at all of the Ghats of significant significance in the 1820s, 1829, I believe this map was made, 1829, listed there. And then again, another of these tourism posters. When you look at the tourism poster, it's showing what a person in the 1930s thought that a foreigner would like to see. So you have women in saris, people bathing, temples, boats, and this was often the motif that was used to show Varanasi that it's all about the riverside, which this is the biggest link to Varanasi's development as a city. It's a riverside location in history. So fantastic colors and style there. Here's just a small promo items that I myself developed, taking some photographs. I like portals, so some pictures of doors, and of course our yoga component that after years of walking around with people, I felt that there was some tourists that wanted even deeper interaction in the area of meditation and yoga. Varanasi walks or Varanasi walking tours, our company, we weren't the first ones to think walking tours. Walking tours have always been happening all the way back into Europe, the great circles, the great walks, the great tours. Camino de Santiago, the San Jacques de Compostela, these trips in Europe, walking for religious or spiritual purposes or mixed purposes now as tourists. Okay. Thank you. I was just mentioning about our company and the development of walking tours and boat rides. And we weren't the first to think about this, but in Varanasi, we were one of the first ones to start to explore the alleyways. Of course, Professor Ranapipi Singh, a gentleman named Bayat Nidrar, gave me my first walking tour when I was working in the university experience with study abroad program. And I thought this will be fantastic for my students. So I started to take them around Varanasi and asking them to do projects on wrestlers, on pundits, on gardens, on just any economy, spirituality, bhajans, yoga. And I ended up moving through the different neighborhoods in a sort of a route that I linked together with the static sites and focused on having experiences with people. It all started out with taking boat rides with people. And one of the ideas I had after looking at some poetry was somebody had given me a quote, Subai Banaras Shami Avad. The morning rituals are for Banaras, the evening fun is for Lucknow. And just a play on the idea that Banaras was a very Hindu city, that in the morning people got up and went to the Ganga, in the morning the Suba. And so Banaras is made for the sunrise, and Lucknow, with its mudra, with its fantastic culture, was the place for relaxing in the evening and enjoying the night. So I coined Subi Banaras Sunrise boat rides. Of course, now that's eclipsed by Subi Banaras, which is on Asi Ghat, a fantastic event every morning with arti, with havan, with classical music, with yoga. Really, really a fantastic experience. When we start our boat rides, we usually begin there for 15, 20 minutes just to give people a peek into that aspect of the morning. And then Ganga's Aarti, evening boat ride, was my attempt to show people the cremation grounds at night, which the cremation grounds, there's a bit of fetishization of the cremation grounds by foreigners. They're very shocked. Indian clients often don't want to see the cremation grounds, maybe because it incurs some type of sin. It's usually a mixture. Bangaloreans, Mumbai, Calcutta, people have heard about Banaras's ghat of cremation at Manikarnika and do want to see it. So it's always a mixed bag, but the highlight is the Aarti, which isn't patterned after the Aarti in Rishikesh and Haridwar and Dasashramed, and now at many, many other ghats. There's fantastic Aartis happening every evening in Banaras at Panchganga, at Kedar Ghat, at Asi. So a lot of places to take in those, but still Dasashramed, the main ghat, viewing an Aarti on a boat or from the shore. Fantastic part of tourism in Varanasi. So here we go. Just a picture of myself on the boat, sharing about the riverside. This probably is morning, but it looks like an overcast day. Just to give you a blurry background image of what you're seeing. Here, the classic sunrise picture. What's unique about the sunrise in Varanasi is that the city is between two smaller rivers, the Varuna River and the Asi River. And the city that lies between it is Varanasi or Varanasi etymologically. There are some other theories as to why this name has come. There are other names of the city, Kashi, often used by South Indian pilgrims and residents here. And of course, Banaras, the most common name heard in our city, which is a much older name. And currently, the city of Varanasi is renamed by the government of India, 1950, 51, I believe. Also an older name from Vedic scripture. But you have here the sun rising from the east. We're on the western bank. There are no ghats except Kacha or just the bank itself. There are no stone stairs directly across from the city of Varanasi, making for a magnificent viewing. The sun comes up. It creates this beam of light on the river. Hindu people looking at the sun as it rises, getting up before the sunrise in darkness and going into the water, pouring out water to the ancestors, pouring out water to the gods, pouring out water to the divine vivifier, the sun, chanting Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, Gayatri mantra, whatever tradition the people came from. Just a beautiful experience, and people not really frustrated that there are tourists in the space, this sacred space, moving on boats. Really a chance to just participate in the whole stream of experience of the morning. And that sun considered the Bindu of Shiva, the beam of light on the river considered the Jyotirlingam, the first of the great 12 great beams of light that are found throughout India that people go to pilgrimage on. Kashi Vishwanath in our city, the main shrine housing that lingam. But the idea that the Ganga and Shiva are connected far back into time, into the mythology, the foundation of India's cosmology, Varanasi, the first city, the first place created in the world according to Hindu thought and cosmology. Um, just what a place to be, yeah? Here you have a picture in the evening of the cremation grounds. There is a lot of confusion whether you can take pictures of the cremation grounds. Personally, I feel you can take pictures if you're at a distance that doesn't disturb people. You can also take pictures if you engage with the domes, who are the caretakers of that area. The domes would look for a monetary gift and then give you access to take photographs with their permission, as it's their area. And so there's a number of ways to get good photographs, but just barging in there and taking pictures without interacting with the local custom would be very inappropriate. So here you have just how you say, like a kaleidoscope of visuals here: boats moving, people standing, dogs and cows moving around, the great temple behind with a smaller fire inside it, considered the Duni of Shiva, the sacred fire of Shiva, where one of these pieces of fire is taken and used to light every fire. Fantastic backstory of the domes, the people who do the cremations being cursed Brahmins who were caused by Shiva to lose power and end up working for him, cremating bodies. Just a very unique situation, and highly encourage evening walk or boat ride into this area. So that's how I began, with these two boat rides. And of course, I started to explore the city, and in academic terms, maybe we call this geosacred space. I'm not sure who coined this term. Professor P.B. Singh Rana, who I've mentioned, writes on this a lot. You can look up his name and books on Varanasi. Diana Eck has released a book on geosacred space, or sacred space in Banaras. European writers, Jörg Gaggenau, and all of these folks from the University of Heidelberg. I'm just mentioning a couple of the walks here: southern temples and sacred ponds, northern bazaars and hidden alleys. Basically, we have walking tours in different geographic areas of the city. The most easy to understand would be southern temples. This is in the area of Asigat. And northern bazaars and hidden alleys, this is in the area of Chowk and above towards Panchganga, where we saw a picture of earlier. And just going through these two walking tours to let you know how our experiences work. So whether a large group of 20 people or a couple traveling together, or a single person, you can imagine here you are in the south. Here you are in the south of the city. We're sitting underneath the 1920s marble palace. This is in Anandbagh Park. You've probably never heard of it. But interestingly, this is where Mark Twain met a famous saint and gave him a copy of Huckleberry Finn. It also happens to be the same park where Dayanand Saraswati of the Arya Samaj argues with Banaras Pundits whether ultimate reality comes in the shape and form of an image, or if the image is not big enough to contain ultimate reality, and the Arya Samaj begins in the 1800s here. A place filled with history. You can see how pleasant it looks there. This first walk, or Southern Temples, is the easiest one in terms of the constriction of people, because as we get into the alleyways deeper and deeper, they become smaller and more congested, which, depending on how the person is vetted before coming, usually all of the people from your company are very well vetted. We never have any problems, but in other situations, people have been quite nervous about the stairs, the cramped space, cow patties, garbage collection. The smells of spices are fantastic, but sometimes the other smells cause people some consideration. So people need to be made aware of those things. This is another site that's seen on Southern Temples. This is a beautiful site, wrestling ring. Each morning it's hoed up with Ganga clay and dirt, and the wrestlers put sarson kitel, how do you call this oil? Mustard oil on their bodies, and then of course with dust and clay it creates friction so they can grip and throw each other. They begin with some yogic type activities. Fantastic place to visit. Now here you would see in northern bazaars and hidden alleys the type of alleys you would be walking through. You can just catch on the right-hand side that very visible lotus leaf design that is on above my head and down near my knees and feet. These are giant blocks of stone that are carved with the lotus relief on the edges that mark usually the floors, and so the ground floor and first floor. In Banaras, you can see also in the front of me where there's a small picture of Ganga painted, that below her is also the same lotus leaf relief, and above to various, how do you say, detail work, can be heavy or simple. And then you see a havan happening. There are many temples that are on no tourist map. Just by chance, we end up interacting with the priest. You can see here a tourist with me, dressed appropriately, using appropriate language in their posture, and then granted access to this sacred space. And I've just found that tourists, when they can interact with people in the midst of going to sacred sites, it just enriches the whole experience. We also have theme-based walks. So of course there's a theme even within the geography, but then Michael from our team, who is a BHU, Banaras Hindu University educated master's graduate from Canada, he developed a few walks, and one of them was Divine Devi, Sacred Goddess, because he noticed that oftentimes women come, and women feel that it's a world of men out there. And of course, India is very conservative. Men participate in cooking, tailoring, a lot of the jobs you find outside of the house, following traditional culture patterns. And quite often it can make the female traveler feel like it's just constantly men that you're meeting and seeing. And so Michael thought to himself, why don't we make a trip that can focus on the female aspect of Banaras. And let's go from goddess site to goddess site and see where men and women are worshiping female divinity. So this was very interesting to me, and it's become one of our more popular walks just in the last 2 years or so, 2-3 years. Quite a few years ago, Quintal came to me and said, Jay, we want to partner with you. We want you to create a walk for us. We want death in Banaras. We want to understand death. And wow, he and I went around so many years ago, and I showed him all the places I could think of that had to do with death. And then I got to thinking, you know, it's not just death, it's life and death in Banaras. Pardon the pun. It's about rebirth and death, because death is not the end. And so I looked for sites that mix those things together. And this became one of our most popular walks. We called it the night walk. Of course, we can do this in the day or the night. It's basically the best of all of our sites. And it travels from sacred fertility shrines to fearsome ashrams, into the darkness of goddess temples, to the cremation grounds, and ends with a fantastic arti or fire waving ceremony in a temple. One of the top 10 things to do in the destination of Banaras, according to your company. Here we just have a few pictures because some of these sites overlap onto each other. But you can just see the powerful images that we get to interact and talk about. On the left, Sankata Devi, where the Arti ceremony begins every day except for Fridays at about 10:30 p.m. This ends up making it a very long night walk. We do have a shorter option with the Arti at Kedar. And then on the right, what looks to be a Kali is actually a Tara figurine. And those from West Bengal may know the Tara Peeth that was reconstructed by Rani Bhavani of Natore, Bangladesh now, but at the time Bengal. And this is the Banaras replica of the Tara Peeth that she made in the 1750s, perhaps, around the time of American Revolution. Let's continue on here. We can see that in night walks, how the colors change. Often we have an idea of walking around in the daytime, and I was always told that Banaras was dangerous, you can't go out at night. It wasn't my experience, but I kept hearing it. I never saw a tour guide out after Arti, but I always saw men and women, families moving from temple to temple, or participating in some type of spiritual, religious, geosacred event. And I started to take people around at night. And this is the mosque of Aurangzeb, the Darahara Masjid on Panchganga. You can see the minarets are no longer there. But you do see the lotus relief, which is probably from the 1500s, a reconstruction of the temple at the time, the base, and then Aurangzeb in late 1600s takes down the temple and puts the mosque, and the image moves across the street into another house. On the right, you have one of the priests of the Kalbhairav temple putting a band on the right, my right hand, And you can see the friendliness of the gentleman behind. He's also a priest in Kalbhairav temple. And just to interact with these people and hear their stories and have them chant over you the same way that they would over a pilgrim, a very powerful experience that many, many tourists carry back with them forever and have written to us about. I just want to say something about the development of Banaras Yoga, because this is one of our newer offerings of the last 3-4 years. I have been a practitioner of yoga, enjoying pranayama, light asanas, sitting for meditation, and of course, many, many people interested in yoga all over the world. The great gift of India to the world is yoga in many ways. And I thought, why not combine a boat ride and take people in the sunrise to do a Surya Namaskar series on the riverside to the sun, just as it would have been done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Great yogis had come to Banaras and written about it. And though we don't often see people doing this, I think it's historically accurate. I think that there's a great mixture of morning ritual and yoga already intrinsic in the months that you see when people go to temples laying their entire body on the ground and giving namaste to the image and calling it Ashtanga because of the 8 pieces of the body on the ground. Ashtanga asana being one of the center postures of the Surya Namaskar, where you lay your body on the ground. And also doing yoga inside a temple. We have many, many contacts of temple priests and friends that allow us to come in. We don't disturb the worshipers. These temples are in more calm places, and we get to experience doing a series in meditation and pranayama inside a temple. Let's have a look here. You can see some guests here. This guest from Australia, she's a yoga teacher. She started to come to India, and we've hosted her and her husband maybe 5 or 6 times. Eventually, she started a small company and brings small groups of people and teaches yoga in Australia. And I mean, what can you say? You have a picture of this. It's so meaningful. You carry the memories back of raising your hands to the sun and giving this Surya Namaskar in the sunrise. So beautiful. There you have me and my partner, who's a Kathak dancer. We're in one of the very far off temples that we're allowed access to. This temple actually is inactive and able to host large groups or small, and just a fantastic place to do yoga. Very meditative, very spiritual. The hosts of this temple graciously giving us access to this place in Varanasi. Here you have a slightly fuzzy picture, but one of my favorite pictures that I've ever taken in Varanasi. I wanted to share with you. You can see the sun just glistening off the Ganga River. The Ganga looks like a sheet of steel glass just under the boat. We would have started this experience probably an hour before this, because the posture they're on is a seated posture. It looks to be a twist, supine twist. And the embankment where you can have 1 or 2 people. This is just a beautiful place to do yoga in the morning. I'd like to say something about our sacred experiences and day tours, because not only do we have a 2-hour, 2.5-hour boat ride, 2.5, 3-hour walking tour, but we also have extended experiences around the edges of Varanasi where you need a car to get to. I started out my company very friendly. The idea of using your own feet, using handpulled boats, using cycle rickshaws. Now, over the years, these are still able. We are still able to do this, but now we're using electric rickshaws. We turn the engine on the boat to get the person back. We don't go to all of them. There are 5 significant ones. We hit as many as a person wants to. This can last for 6 hours. Temple of the Sage and Pond of the Skull. Temple of the Sage is where the sage Kapila came and meditated in Varanasi, and the Pond of the Skull is where the Lat Bhairo is, where you saw their first picture of myself and my guest with the tilak on our foreheads. And these places are harder to get to, and you need a vehicle. This is James Prinsep's drawing of Kapildara, or the Pond of the Sage, as I call it. It looks almost the same. Of course, there's some stone steps on the right-hand side. There's some guardrails, but essentially it's so far out there that it is not a tourist site. It is on the edge of the city, the last of the great sites of the Panchkroshi Yatra. We've cut it down to 2 sites for a 2.5, 3-hour tour by car, or it can be located on you can see one of the older pilgrim maps here, a portion of the Panchkroshi Yatra that you saw in the modern way earlier, and it's the last of the great sites, of 5 great sites Yatra. These would be very exciting for anyone who has an interest in history, who wants to get away from crowds, who's been to Varanasi before, who's taken in the city and wants something different. That brings me to the end of my overview of Varanasi, an overview of our products or experiences that we've developed. We took a lot of time to develop them, and we really have thought, what does the tourist want to see? What do they need to see? Sometimes there's such an overload of information in the digital age here, and people can read all about the place they're going to visit. They know it better than us in some ways, in terms of history. In 1857, this happened. In 1903, I believe this person came. Yes, it's a very historical and amazing place, and that's why we take great pride on the folklore and the aspects of open sacred space for a person to visit and interact with, and our contacts in these places. Though I'm from USA, I've lived in Varanasi for, 18, 20 years now. And of course, all of our staff grew up here in Varanasi, except for Michael, who, like myself, has made Varanasi his home over the years. Thank you so much for letting me share about Destination Varanasi. And I hope to see you walking in Varanasi one day soon.